Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fritsch. Helen is a 60-plus lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB bodybuilding pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello, and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fritsch, and this is episode number 74. Now, today I am very fortunate to be able to bring back a repeat guest, someone who was one of my very first guests on my podcast when I first started 4 years ago. I will be speaking with 58-year-old functional health coach, hormone balancing fitness expert, and Flipping 50 founder, Debra Atkinson. Now, Debra being a hormone expert, I really wanted to bring her back on the show because there is a word out there in the English vocabulary, and it's a 7-letter word, but for many women over 40, 50, 60, and beyond, we look at it as a 4-letter word, and that word is menopause. Yes, menopause. I know it wreaked havoc with my life, and I know so many others who it's wreaking havoc with today, and I thought Debra would be the perfect guest to come back and talk about menopause and how we can deal with menopause to make it more seamless and more bearable as we approach the dreaded 7-letter word. So without further ado, I really enjoyed this conversation with Debra. It was great picking her brain, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Also, grab a pen and paper because I know that there'll be some things that you want to write down and take away.
Hi, Debra. Welcome to the show.
Well, hello, you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm guessing I probably should say welcome back to the show because I've been doing this podcast for almost 4 years now, and you were one of my very first guests.
I remember. How honored.
Yes. And I just thought, I was thinking because I think right now we laugh about what's trending out there. And it seems like to me that for women over 50, which you are an expert in, fitness and menopause are trending right now. So I thought I got to bring Debra back onto the show because there's so many things that I think we can talk about that so many women are asking right now because they're experiencing all these second half symptoms and brand new situations that they don't really know how to handle, and they don't know which direction to go to or what kind of help to ask for. So, but for my listeners, I am speaking to 58-year-old functional health coach, hormone balancing fitness expert, and Flipping 50 founder, Debra Atkinson. Now, Debra has helped over 250,000 women literally, quote unquote, flip their second half with the vitality and energy that they want. She's a best-selling author of several books, including You Still Got It, Girl, The After 50 Fitness Formula for Women, Navigating Fitness After 50, Your GPS for Choosing Programs and Professionals You Can Trust, and, which I love, Hot, Not Bothered. Debra hosts the Flipping 50 TV and Flipping 50 podcast. She's an AARP top podcast for 50 host. She's also a frequent speaker for TED Talks, and she gives so many other presentations to several other very accredited foundations and councils and all kinds of corporations. She's an American Council on Exercise subject matter expert. She's also a prior senior lecturer in kinesiology at Iowa State. That's really impressive considering I took kinesiology in graduate school and it was not one of my favorite subjects. She's a frequent contributor at the Huffington Post and several other featured outlets. And again, I am honored to have you back as a repeat guest.
Well, I'm very honored to be here. First date is one thing, but when you get a second date, it's always good.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, like I mentioned earlier, I just think I'm so thrilled that you were able, because I know how busy you are. I listen to your podcast. I follow you on social media. So I know you're super busy with that and all your clients. So thank you for joining. But let's just jump right in. So, I know I normally like to ask people about their backgrounds, but I think we have a lot to talk about. So I'm really interested in how did you get into fitness and then what led that into becoming a hormone expert?
Yeah, well, and I'll have to say that both potentially were happy accidents. So way back when, this is year 38 in fitness for me full time. And I started out in college to be a graphic design major. I'd walked around as a kid with a sketchbook and pencils in my hand since first grade. And that was just drilled into my head. You could do this, you could do that. And and I loved it and I hated it. So at some point, right before I went to college was the first time that I actually started exercising self-initiated. No coach saying you need to run, you need to do this, you got to do that. Just on my own, I had started walking with my mom. That became jogging and then running for me. And, about my sophomore year, I was like, I don't know. Every graphic designer I know smokes, drinks, and stays up all night to do their projects. I don't fit in here, So I stuck one foot in one major, kept one there. And at the end of the semester, I said, no, I totally want to do this. I want to make people feel the way I have been made to feel by fitness. Not that just, looking better, but I am a better student. I am a better, every role I play is better because of the exercise. And I wanted that to be the gift I gave people. And I realized that looking back, even I'd always been a teacher and that's played through my whole life. And I think that's really what we are. As trainers or fitness instructors, we are teachers. And it's not just knowing the information ourselves, but it's can we break it down into bite-sized pieces that have practical application to the people who really need the message. And women have a hard time complimenting themselves, so I'm getting stuck on this, but I think that's my secret sauce. I know the cue to give before a woman knows to ask for it. And that's, I think why I've had some success relating to women. So that's how I got into fitness. At 49, I had been an instructor, a senior lecturer in kinesiology. I'd already left that because I wanted to be able to move a little faster, make changes faster. And in academia, like the government, you can't move very fast because there's too many committee meetings and there's too much, red tape to go through. But I liked the fact that working in a private business, I could make a decision in the morning and I could implement it in the afternoon. And it might be right or wrong, but we were going to move forward at some point. And we'd had a lot of success during the downturn in 2007 and 2008. And in the middle of the Midwest, in a conservative environment. And I wanted to give that to fitness professionals. So in addition to teaching, one of the things I always wanted to do was to help level up the fitness industry. And I noticed as a senior lecturer, we were losing the good ones. So I saw them coming in to their major courses, taught those, and then I also supervised them in their last thing they do before graduation, which is internships. I would see 4-point students quitting because they get out there and realize I can't make money if I can't sell. And I don't want to do that. They felt it was dirty and slimy. And, the reality is we need those educated people to be able to market themselves so that everyone can find them, because otherwise we're only allowing them to find the people who know marketing and could care less about whether they help you after you buy it. Mm-hmm. So that's really what I quit my job and everything else to do at 49. And then I realized all of a sudden, I'm going to be a hypocrite if I'm telling trainers how to market and sell and position themselves if I'm not actually doing it myself. So you become irrelevant really fast. And that word means a lot to us right here. But so I said, I got to pick a niche. And I picked the one that I had been working with most frequently for the last 30 years. And that was women in the baby boomer market who they'd been telling me over and over again, nobody understands us. I'm going to my doctor and they're just saying, well, that's just part of menopause. Of course you're gaining weight and welcome to menopause, and just settle because this is it. And they weren't willing to. So that's how I stumbled into the niche flipping 50.
I love that. I mean, especially when you're right there and, teetering at 50.
Right.
And so literally, it's like you literally flip a switch because, one day you're 49 and then the next day you're 50. So that's a great catch-all phrase. I mean, because it really does, encompass everything that you represent.
Yeah. And the real, I think there's so many ways you can interpret that. I have friends on both sides, but I think the biggest thing is that women at every age, hopefully, are flipping 50. We're flipping the idea of what 50 or what 60 or what 70 meant without needing another number behind it. It's in every woman kind of let's become aware of what's possible. And we are right now. I mean, Helen, you and I are making history. Everyone watching this is making history because we now have science that we don't have to age the way our moms did or the way our grandmothers did. We know that we can change the way we age, and it starts up here. So it's flipping 50 in your expectation and not thinking that your age actually determines. I don't know about you, but my feathers get a little ruffled up when a woman says, well, I'm 65. What should I be doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Some of my friends doing Ironman are 65. What do you want to do? Right.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And I get a lot of those questions too, especially women in their 60s. I have some clients, right now who are in their 60s and they want to actually compete in bodybuilding shows, which I think is amazing because now, the bodybuilding, arena is opening up to more masters athletes, which, I know personally, I was a huge proponent and advocate of that. Once I turned pro, we started, I wrote this beautiful, very tactful letter to the NPC/IFBB Federation, talking to the promoters saying, we're here and we're thrilled that you're offering 35 and 40 and 45 categories. But for those of us who are 50, 55, 60, allow us to continue to compete. And, they listened. And so that's what's super thrilling too.
Awesome.
And now so many other women are, interested in getting into exercise over 50 and 55 and 60. And I just saw yesterday that this one gal, 74 years old, is gracing the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing is that? I saw that and I thought, oh my God, this is like monumental. It's really, really very, very exciting. But just like you, when you were so young, I mean, to be at that age back then and self-induce yourself to start exercising and not having a coach or a program, that's amazing. I mean, because a lot of people now, even for me, I mean, I live here in Scottsdale. I have a bodybuilding coach. She's in Atlanta, but I have a strength coach here in Scottsdale that I train with a couple times a week at least, just because I like those, I like the programming. I like being held accountable, and stuff like that. So,
you bring up such a good point. So for anybody who might be watching, I think we should say this. So many women think, well, I should be able to do this myself, and the truth is, even we all work harder when we're in the presence of a coach who holds a little space out here for, no, you can do more. We know you're capable of more. So important to be said.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I can go to the gym and work out, but when I'm with my coach, I mean, he's pushing me to points where I normally probably would not be pushing myself if I was alone.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's talk about, what I really wanted you on here for, because you are an expert and I see you talk about this, subject quite often is menopause. I think it's really relevant right now. I think we were talking earlier about how there's things out there trending, and I think menopause is trending right now because I know so many people who are getting ready. They're even in their late 30s, starting to, experience some of these side effects of menopause. And then there's perimenopause, and then there's menopause and postmenopause. So let's kind of start off like in the beginning here with perimenopause and maybe give some idea as to what women can expect when they start feeling some things that they can recognize, thinking, oh, okay, I must be starting this life change.
Yeah. Well, and let's say this too, that the expectation that we create, we want to be careful with. So these are possible symptoms of perimenopause, but they're not mandatory. So be sure that you hear that, right? That sometimes women don't recognize I'm in it. And just because you are in it doesn't necessarily mean your world is going to get flipped upside down. Every woman's journey is different. You may experience many of these symptoms. There are actually 34. So where we stopped at, not 33, it's not 35, it's 34. This seems ridiculous to me, but there are 34 that are recognized by physicians as symptoms of menopause. And a lot of them we would say, okay, I get that. Hot flashes, night sweats. Everybody is going to say that. Weight gain is one. Belly fat is another, and that can be independent. So many women who don't actually change, body weight doesn't change, but they still experience a relocation of body fat, redistribution, and it goes to the belly. And that's due to hormonal changes. Okay, so many of us would say, okay, those are recognizable. I could have probably listed those all by myself. Well, then there's kind of that subset of some of these that like low libido. You may not put the two together, but that happens for a lot of women. Low energy, fatigue. And then there are this weird subset of things you would be like, are you kidding me? Like your gums like get all cranky and you have electric shocks. Strange things that you would be like, really? No, I never want to put that together, right? So what if you had those? But no hot flashes, none of the typical stuff, you would never know. And another woman who's kind of in this arena, Amanda Thebe, she'd written, a book about her own experience. And because her symptoms were just so, atypical, for 2 years, she was passed around from one doctor to another. And I'd like to think that functional doctors or functional medicine may have uncovered that a little bit sooner. But when you're seeing a Western trained doctor and you're falling outside of the norms, you're an outlier with symptoms that everybody doesn't get. These are not common. It's probably going to take a little bit longer for somebody to realize, well, wait a minute, where are you in your life and your history and what's happening? So I think the obvious things, hot flashes, night sweats, your period starting to be irregular. They change from what they were for you. So not according to any national norm, but just for you. I mean, are they more heavier? Are they more scanty? Are they skipping? That's a big one. And perimenopause can last like 11 years. So, there's a lot of opportunity here for you to discover, what might be happening. I don't know about yours, but my experience was, I think if I look back, but I didn't get it at the time. It didn't dawn on me that's what it was. but I experienced maybe a handful of night sweats, and I never put that together with, okay, this is what happens, because it didn't stay consistent, and it wasn't like every night, all night, or it wasn't even more than 5 different unique times, and then it was done. And, never put that together. So, the biggest sign for me too was a shift in weight, a shift in belly fat, a shift from my typical training, things that I had been doing many times before, all of a sudden didn't work for me. Probably the most famous words that I hear, I'm going to bet you hear them too. It's like, everything I used to do doesn't work anymore. Like if I would gain weight, what I used to do is this, that's not working. And, that's going to be true for most women.
No, I agree. I didn't really go through perimenopause, and around 55, 56, all of a sudden, and I was kind of a little proud that I'm like, oh, I'm working out and this and that, whatever. And I'm going to sail right through this. And then one day the furnace just opened up. And I could literally feel it just starting to come up through my, chest and my stomach and my core and my head. And then I'd get soaking wet. My hair would be, wet, and it would go from sporadically to more like, oh my God, now I'm going through it once every hour. And finally at that point, I'm like, okay, I need to get some help. I need to do something and go to a hormone specialist to see what I can do, because I cannot deal with this any longer. So anyway, but you're right, though. I mean, so many women experience different symptoms and at different ages. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what they're going through, what stage of menopause that they are going through.
That's so true. And all of those, or any of those 34 signs, those can happen and begin happening during perimenopause. But some women don't experience hot flashes until postmenopause. And just to, state the obvious, but not necessarily. So menopause actually is just the definition of that. Boom, you've hit 12 months since your last period, and now you're in postmenopause. Hello. It's like you cross a threshold. That's it. Mm-hmm. I tend to, in our Flipping 50 menopause fitness specialist, I tend to divide it into 3 different segments. And ironically, though, the menopause transition, the last couple of years of perimenopause, you don't know until you've hit menopause what that was. But the first couple of postmenopause, during that period of time, under the hood, we're rapidly losing muscle mass and we're more rapidly losing bone density. Mm-hmm. And that is true even if you choose to do HRT. We're not getting back to our pre-menopause state. We're probably improving it and decreasing risk of losing muscle, making it more potential, more possible to see muscle, lean muscle tissue and gain, and to increase or stop losses of bone density. But for all women who were like in that 3 to 5 year period during the pandemic, if you weren't strength training because you didn't have access, because you didn't get to Amazon before we had this global dumbbell shortage, we need to regroup right now. We got to reconcile that loss, because the longer that goes past without you doing something, there's a potential for more. And I don't mean to be dramatic, but devastating disabilities are much more likely that do not have to happen. So it's time definitely to get after strength training.
No, I couldn't be more agreeable with that statement, and also too such a huge proponent. The body's such an amazing machine, and it will adapt so easily, because we've spoken with people that I work with. I always get questioned quite a bit, being at work and being on an airplane for hours on end, you just start talking about things and they'll ask me a lot of questions. I'm like, well, eating a well-balanced, clean diet and also resistance training, those are key. And I do a lot of cardio. I'm like, well, you can be a cardio bunny till the cows come home. But if you really, it's all about movement. It's all about quality of life. And nobody wants to end up, in a wheelchair or use a walker. I mean, not that I know of. And nobody wants, to be, hunched over because, their bones are weak. And it's just a plethora of things, especially being a flight attendant. I see so many older people coming on the airplane that are only 3 or 4 years older than me or the same age as me, or, and they're bringing their paw bell because they're pulling out a gallon-sized baggie with, they have to take a pill. And they need water. And it's just like, oh, if you only had a little 1 pound weights or 3 pound weights, and even just, sitting in a chair and doing some basic things. But, obviously, once again, we've talked about if there's no one giving them direction, they know what they know. And a lot of times as we get older, the blinders start, in closing in, and our peripheral vision is getting, more narrow to the point where, my mother, God rest her soul, she was one of those peripheral vision blinder people where she had a routine, and every single day, this is what she did. And if I go to visit, there was no, trying to get her out of the routine or going someplace different to eat. And it was just all very regimented because that's what she knew. Mm-hmm. And it was very frustrating because she also too was a smoker and a drinker, but did not exercise. And it was just, her diet was terrible. And it was, unfortunately, she passed away of lung cancer. But I think subconsciously, that's why I'm so driven on staying in shape and trying to eat well, just because I can't go down that path, and I don't want to go down that path. And for the older generation to recognize this, I participate in Masters track and field also. And they have these, Masters track and field events that I go to. And these women, I interviewed this gal, Flo Myler, who is 87 years old, and she's the world champion in pole vaulting in her age category.
Awesome.
And after I finished that interview, I thought, well, I've always wanted to pole vault. If she can do it, I can do it. So now I pole vault too. And so it's just one of those things where I'm so thrilled to see women taking charge of their own destiny and making things happen, because they're like, I don't want to sit at home. I want to see the world, and I can still do things, and I can still be active. And, I love that. It's all about, like you said earlier, mindset. Mindset is key. Yeah. And it's all about surrounding yourself with like-minded people in a community who will hold you accountable to make those things happen.
I love it. And I love the whole idea of peer pressure, right? You better choose your peers wisely, right? So you can either choose to stay and do that same little thing in the same little box, or you choose a peer who's pole vaulting, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I ended up, making new friends in that whole, sports thing too. And I just love it. And if I want to learn something or do something, I plan on going skydiving this summer for my 65th birthday. And I can't wait. I just think people think you're crazy, but I'm thinking the thought of just jumping out of an airplane and just flying above, the earth, to me is so exhilarating. I honestly can't wait. I don't really know anybody else that I know who wants to do that, but it's just one of those things. But I'm just thrilled that today, that's why I started this podcast too, because age really is so irrelevant in anything that you want to do. And it's not necessarily even fitness or sports or athletics, but it's picking up a new hobby, learning how to knit, reading, boating. Just anything. There's so many things out there for so many people of all different ages. And that's why, women like you, especially, who are such huge proponents of movement and fitness and not letting getting some of these natural occurrences to get in our way, that you can still work around menopause and you can still do things and be successful, as long as you have the right knowledge and you seek out the right, people to help you, and guide you through life.
Yeah, so true. So true. And before I forget, because I will, I want to come back to something you said about, when you're talking to people and you said, you can be a cardio queen or an exercise bunny on cardio as much as you want, but actually that may be hurting, right? So you're increasing cortisol levels. And I think that's where we get into, when you're in menopause, your estrogen comes down. What happens is your body in balance takes cortisol up. So we're all more susceptible to negative effects of stress, and exercise is stress. Even an appropriate dose of exercise is stress. But when you are, we're in this middle of the road, kind of narrowed road, where we're affected by stressors from all sorts, like our aging parents and maybe our young adult kids and our peak of our careers, making major changes in our lives. There's a lot of directional stresses. We've just gone through a pandemic. There's another one. And our hormones are changing. There's another one. And if we continue to exercise in the same way we used to, or thinking that more is better, right? We're actually increasing our cortisol level. And when you're increasing cortisol, we are storing fat. Your body is going to store fat and stop and say,
I'm so glad you said that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those who are thinking, I got to do my cardio, and I get it, because, back in our 30s, we did so much of that, and we thought that was the right thing. We got away with it because we had a different hormone profile than we do now. So, I know nobody's going to go cold turkey and say, well, I'm not going to do cardio anymore. I'm going to do 100% strength training. But I think if you can learn to trade a day, and do a little bit more strength and look at proportionately, take that strength training up. And every decade you age or plan to, your strength training should probably be a higher percentage of your workout than your cardio is.
I agree. And even with me, bodybuilding and prepping for shows, I know there's coaches out there who prescribe this, but the thought of some of these friends of mine who are on a step mill or Stairmaster or a treadmill for an hour or 2 hours, I'm like, I can't even imagine. I think the most cardio I do during prep is like 30 minutes. And it's just, I just can't. I'm my body, I have a high metabolism to begin with, but that just to me is so damaging. And also too, especially with runners, if you look at somebody who's a runner, their muscle tone, obviously, if they're running all these miles every single week, it's hard to put on muscle because the calorie content is just going out the window, basically. So
yeah, so very true. And we can also point to, you can't outrun bone density. So you may think, because so much of the time we've been told by even physicians, walking is weight-bearing exercise and that's what we need. It's actually not enough. We need that strength training to really have more impact on the bone so that it gets stronger. And a lot of runners, aging runners, will experience fractures just even running. It's happening because their body weight tends to be on the low side, and they don't have enough structure or pull on the bone, and there's just not enough impact.
Right. So let's talk. We've talked about some symptoms and side effects, but let's talk about our aging skin and hormones and how, hormones affect our skin.
Yeah, well, if you solve that one, you let me know. I'm coming over there. But so estrogen, again, is really partially to blame for when you start suddenly. And I think that's honestly, it feels like it happens that way. I remember the couple of years before I actually hit menopause, I remember women saying, you don't even look like you have, wrinkles or anything on your neck. And I'm like, well, if you get closer, they're there. But then it was like, suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, I see them now. And I think as soon as that estrogen takes a nosedive, the little lines, the ones you've earned, the smile lines, the cry lines, the all of it, they tend to show up a little bit more. We definitely lose collagen production. And so so many people will ask this, is collagen worth it? Should I be doing that? And, I'm a proponent of why wouldn't you, right? Your skin, hair, and nails, and if you're using the right kind, it's also good for your gut. So definitely, but, there's no magic external secret. I think you got to pick good products that don't have toxins in them for sure, but it's eating it, it's drinking it, it's exercise. It's probably not consuming a lot of sugar and alcohol will be really helpful. But I think, and looking at you, look at your skin, it's fantastic. This is a family show. Maybe I'm going to say something bad, but this shit works.
You're right.
If you exercise, you're going to have a little bit more cellular turnover. Your skin is more rejuvenated, and, you line people up. And I think if you're right there where you need to be in your sweet spot, not exercising too much, because that can age you with oxidative damage, not exercising too little, but you find your sweet spot, you will look younger.
Well, and I'm sure you've had this happen too, because I've actually had people come up to me and they say, "What's your secret?" And I just laugh, and or they've asked me, "Oh, who's your plastic surgeon? Because your facelift looks amazing." And I'm like, "Well, that's a backhanded compliment. Thank you. I haven't had a facelift yet, but thank you." But I tell them, I'm like, "There's no secret. It's classic textbook. It's eating a clean, balanced diet. It's drinking, and I try to get in a gallon of water a day. A lot of people wouldn't be able to do that, but that's what I try to do." Sleep, like as you have mentioned several times, so imperative. Staying out of the sun, or if you are in the sun, using sunscreen, not smoking. I mean, and then of course exercising and weight bearing, exercises especially. That to me is, because sometimes I would look in the mirror and I'm like laughing, thinking, gosh, when I was back in my 20s and 30s, who would have ever thought that in my 60s, I'm looking at my skin going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't have all the wrinkles that I think I should be having. And I just attribute it because we look at ourselves every day in the mirror. So we're used to seeing what we see. But in time, things do tend to, as you mentioned, start doing this downward trend. Mm-hmm. I feel very fortunate. I mean, I know sooner or later, things are going to get worse. I see my little collagen, elasticities in certain parts of my face starting to fade. But that's just, I attribute it to just my, clean eating and my healthy lifestyle. And I just think, and once again, the body is an amazing machine. And I think if people clean up their diets and, start doing weight training exercises and hydrating and sleeping and doing some of the things that I mentioned prior, it's amazing. When I first started bodybuilding, my very first show, I was told that I could be ready for a show in a month. Of course, now I know that's not true, but I was naive back then. I go, okay, well then I'll do it. And I was working at a wine shop at the time because I'm a certified wine specialist. That's my hobby. And I was drinking wine every day with the customers. And then if I was at work, I'd be going out with the crews. And or if I'm home, I'm having a glass of wine, cooking dinner, whatever. And finally, they're like, no alcohol, no sugar, no this, no that. And I was like, oh my God, like for a month, I can do it. I can do it. My body transformation in just 1 month, eating that way, it took me to where I am today. I was so amazed at how my body transformed in just a month's time. I couldn't believe it. And I just thought, I've never gone back. And even when I'm not in prep, I'm still, I did a bunch of, I just came in from Munich yesterday, and that was a long day, going Munich, Charlotte, Phoenix. But, today I've been to the grocery and I'm looking around my kitchen behind my laptop here, and I see, salmon and potatoes and, all these other things on the counter cooling off that I cooked right before you and I went on. But that's just a way of life for me. So it's just like, a habit takes 30 days to develop. And then once you've got that habit, it's just like, you're set. I'm sure you probably do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think when you have that dramatic turnaround, I will never forget a client said this to me once, who had been so resistant, like, I don't want to do this, dragging the feet. And then I'm like, we've done everything else. I think, if you want to see more change, you're going to have to do this thing. So she did it. And she's like, feeling good feels good. Why would I ever want to go back? Once you hit that point, it's not discipline. It's just, no, I want to continue feeling that way. And I think if you're on the other side right now thinking, why would I want to give that up, or I can't give it up, or don't even want to entertain that yet. I think if you decide what I'm doing right now is not working, it becomes easier just to say, well, why not try it this way? Because I can always go back to what's not working now, right? And give yourself that power. But the experience is, if you've been there, it's like swimming for the first time. You struggle and you drink a lot of water in if you're learning to swim. But when you first swim, You first do it, you float, it's effortless. There's no going back. That feels so good that you can get there.
Right. And I think so many people, and especially women, at least the women that I know, are so used to not feeling well that they don't know anything else. And then all of a sudden, when you put them on a new program with a new eating diet, like with a new meal plan, and then incorporate resistance training 4 or 5 days a week, literally within a week or two, they're like, oh, my energy, oh my God, I feel so much better. I'm already seeing some changes. And it's just like, then they get all motivated, and then the family is, excited, and the husbands are complimenting them. And, but yeah, it's just like, I think we're so used to not feeling well that's just the norm.
Yeah. We've accepted it. And it's, you don't know it if you're in that moment, because it's just like anything else, whether it's, you've always dealt with a certain level of indigestion or problems with elimination. I'm always surprised. You and I probably have this conversation with women more often than anyone else, like their doctors or their spouses, right? About constipation. That's another, for women going through hormonal changes, that one happens a lot. And we don't talk about it, but nobody feels their best when that's going on. You change your diet, you start to exercise, you start to sleep better, which means we probably relax and chill out a little bit better. That improves too. And then everybody's happy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's true. I know I am. So let's talk about also too, we touched on it here and there, but let's talk about the belly fat, because that's a huge, huge thorn in everyone's side.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the reasons for it again. So, when estrogen comes down, that estrogen does a couple of things. We've always forever associated decline in estrogen means bone loss, right? Because you have that protection with bone. But it's also, we now know, associated with, it's a muscle stimulus. So we maintained our lean muscle mass far easier. And when that estrogen comes down, the same exercise, you may be feeling like, I'm not creating the tone, like I don't see the tone, I'm doing the work, but where's the tone? And, part of that is it's going to take a little bit more stimulus. It may take another set, it may take a little heavier weight for you to do it. And it may take a little bit more protein, because that also declines our ability to use protein, or muscle protein synthesis declines. So all of those things, declining muscle. And remember that the body's way of trying to balance hormones is estrogen down, cortisol comes up. When cortisol is present, we're in fat storage mode. And that also, when we're in stress and cortisol mode, we generally have higher blood sugar, more volatile blood sugar levels up and down. And when that's true, we've got more insulin coming in. Women in midlife, as they go through hormonal changes, tend to be more carbohydrate sensitive, or insulin sensitivity drops down. That means that to reduce your blood sugar after a meal or something that you eat, or that glass of wine, you require more insulin than you used to. It used to take this amount to bring the blood sugar back down. Well, now it's taking this amount. But when that insulin goes up, again, that's a signal to your body, store fat. And it can't do two equal and opposite things. So if your body is stressed and or you've got blood sugar issues and you've got high insulin needed to get that out of there, you're in fat storage mode. And so even if you're trying to exercise and burn fat, your body won't do that. It'll perceive the exercise as even more stress and probably more fat storage. So if that's you, you're in this vicious cycle. And in here, it's telling you, no, but I need to exercise, because that's what we've been told. Eat less, exercise more. You got to say, okay, I need to erase, I need to delete, and we're going to have to unlearn that one. And then chill out a little. So we need a reset, most likely, before even the right kind of exercise will support you. We need to decrease that stress level. You need just a few days. You may need a week of just relaxing, maybe yoga, maybe going for walks, not high intensity, but very low intensity, getting more rest, starting to bring those good foods back, even though the tendency for probably every woman over 50 is going to be diet. Don't do it. Don't go there, right? Quality diet changes, yes, but nobody should be hungry or starving because, again, your body goes stress mode when that happens. When you fill that up and you feel like, okay, I'm feeling more rested, I'm feeling better again, you may very likely lose some of that weight, shed some of that even belly fat, and feel like you've made progress for having done nothing. And that's a very good sign, like Hansel and Gretel leaving breadcrumbs, that you were under stress. Your body needs potentially less exercise than it ever did. When you do exercise, it needs to be really high quality. And I have to agree with, I'm sure if we went to the gym and we trailed around Helen, we would be like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I have to do that, right? But the idea of we've never needed high intensity exercise more in our lives than we do right now. We do need to reach muscle fatigue. We need that stimulus. We need heavy weight. We're not wimpy because we're a certain age. And we need, when the time is right, we need high intensity interval training to breathlessness when it's right for us. But we need these highs and lows, and we have to stay out of that moderate level exercise because that actually increases our cortisol levels. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a mouthful.
No, but everything you said was spot on and 100% correct. And I know that you experience this too, but every single woman that I take on as a client, I'll ask them to send me, like, for the first 3 days, I want to see what you're eating. And nobody eats enough food, and everybody's afraid of carbohydrates. And so when I prescribe a new meal plan for them and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so much food. And I'm like, but don't forget, your meal plan and your resistance training are going hand in hand. And I said, and you literally have been putting your body in starvation mode. And when it's in this fight or flight moment where it's holding on to every bit of morsel, it's using, taking all the food that you are eating, the 1 or 2 meals a day that you are eating, and it's storing them for an emergency, possibly later. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm feeling better and I have more energy. And I'm like, well, of course you do. I mean, it's just, but we've been so fixated with, society and being thin and, these, 1,000 calories or less, 900 calorie diets and people starving. And and then a question that I get, asked all the time, or a statement that I hear all the time when I meet somebody, and they'll say, oh, you're into bodybuilding, so you don't eat any carbs. Girl, I eat carbs 6 times. I mean, I eat 5 to 6 meals a day, and I eat carbs at every single meal. And they're like horrified. What? I'm like, girl, carbs are not your enemy. I mean, yeah. And I'm like, and nobody eats enough protein, and their idea of a healthy snack is, something packaged, and it's just like. And nobody reads labels. Everybody's reading the front of a label. I'm like, no, the front, read the back of the label. If you see words on there that you can't pronounce, put it back on the shelf, So, yeah. I learned so much when I first started bodybuilding. I was like everybody else, and a rat in a maze, but I'm a little voracious sponge, like I'm sure like you are. And, I'm always learning, nonstop. And I love it. And I want to help others, and I want to serve others like you do. And because I want everybody to make the second chapter of their life the best chapter. I wouldn't go back to my 20s and 30s or 40s for anything. I'm very happy where I'm at. And I look forward to turning 65 and 70 and hopefully, older. And I'm sure you probably feel the same way.
I think right now, I think it used to be, impolite, improper to say, how old are you? Right. And definitely to broadcast it. Right. But I think it's a source of pride. And I think we need to start wearing it that way. And especially those of you who are, following us, and you're also on that path, because who's watching? Our daughter-in-law.
Absolutely.
Let's help them, set a new standard here. But I also don't want to skip over 2 things you said. that, I think we both can attest to. Number one, most women who are experiencing a struggle with body weight or belly fat, the bigger mistake, more women are under eating than overeating. So if you're watching, consider whether that might be true for you. And we've got this whole concept of, fasting. Should I be fasting or not fasting? And I think we've taken that to extremes. So fasting started as just being eating that same amount of food, but just within a window of time. And instead it's become, well, I'm going to eat in a short window, but I'm also just only going to have a meal. Now we're just back in the 70s dieting again. And it's really no change, and your body can't handle that stress. So if it's not working, what you're seeing is the result of the habits that you've had. So take a good look at it. If it's not working, what change would you be willing to make to see if it feels good? And the other thing I want to point out, you said it so brilliantly, but we don't want to skip over it, is your muscle. To build muscle, we always say protein, but muscle needs carbs. You couldn't be a bodybuilder as successful as you are without carbohydrates. So I think case in point right here, you've got a beautiful woman, who is, almost 65, who's able to, win and compete, but it takes protein and it takes carbohydrates.
Yes, and especially like being in my off season right now, I'm eating between 350 and 400 grams of carbs a day. That's a lot. And of course, I'm loving every minute of it. but of course, also too, my fat intake is also increased, and people are like, "Oh, what are you eating?" And I'm like, "Don't get excited. It's your avocados, your nuts, your pumpkin seed, like your seeds, and your oils and stuff like that." So I'm like, yes, right now I do indulge in some fun stuff like wine or dark chocolate or eat ice cream on occasion. But yeah, I'm still kind of like, staying along the line. But you are 100% correct. Under eating is like, the way things are going right now. And it's, we have to change that. People are afraid to eat. And I'm like, don't be afraid to eat. You're going to feel so much better. You're going to feel so much better. Yeah. So I know, there's just a few more things I want to ask you real quick. But let's talk really quickly about HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, because a lot of people, at least the women I speak with, when they start telling me these symptoms and I'm saying, well, you should go get a hormone panel done. I bet your hormones are probably out of whack. And then go to your OBGYN or your GP and talk about HRT. Well, what's that? So they don't even know that there's an option to make you even feel better. They're looking at all these over-the-counter, remedies, and, that might work, for a little bit. But as soon as I went on to HRT, I was like, oh, this has been a godsend.
Yeah, well, and I think the other side is maybe awareness of HRT, but only knowing enough to know the history of it. And historically, it's been like, that's not a good thing. It's not safe. And I'm going to be more at risk for cancer if I'm on that. And so anybody watching, nothing that we're saying here is meant to replace your physician's expertise and what they know about you and your risk. So you may be more at risk if you have a family history or if you personally have experienced breast cancer. But what we know with HRT and the options now, so bioidentical hormones that are more like yours, not synthetic, are actually proving to be much more safe to be on them than not on them. They help you maintain that bone density. They help you maintain that muscle mass. That means we're helping you to decrease fat and belly fat by controlling those cortisol levels are not so rampant or up and down. That's supporting you. And there are many female physicians now using HRT themselves who claim I'm never going off. And I'm in that boat right now, unless something comes about that, and we've all got to be open to research, because we are the first generation going through who's had these options.
Mm-hmm.
And new research comes out all the time, but we're seeing them prove more beneficial for aging and health than not. So just to throw out another name here, Dr. Devaki Bergson or Lindsay Bergson. I'm not supposed to say her age, but she's not 60 anymore. Can I say that? And she's had cancer 5 times. She herself is on HRT, and she was kind of in her 20s, got in and was studying hormones before hormones were a thing. I mean, way before anybody was talking about them. And she says, they've saved my life. And if you saw her, you would say she's not that age. It's very hard to believe. So, there are more stories out there about that, but it's not mainstream yet, because there are more Western trained doctors who may be just schooled in the old school, and they're going to play it safe. And so they're not aware of bioidentical hormones or of testing in a more functional way.
Right. No, I agree with that. And everyone that I speak with, that's the first thing out of my mouth. It's like, well, have you had your hormones tested lately? And even my clients, I'll ask them to get a hormone panel done just to see where they're at, because everybody's basically is complaining about the same, issues and problems that they're having with, belly fat and just overall, other symptoms that we talked about that are related to menopause. So I think HRT is awesome. As a matter of fact, I just got a hormone panel done today because I just thought, well, I haven't had one done in a while. And the last one I had was like zilch, zero, nada. So with me bodybuilding, I'm A, an ectomorph, B, I'm a hard gainer. I have a metabolism that's through the roof. So, I do have trouble putting on muscle. So I thought, let me get another hormone panel done, and maybe I can get on something that, something will help me with that. So we'll see what happens. But you've been a joy and a delight and a wealth of information. And if anybody wants to reach out to you to, get a hold of you via social media or your website, or, even reach out to you as a client, where can we send them?
So you can find me. The website is Flipping 50. That's all words spelled out, no spaces. And then at Flipping 50 TV, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So anywhere that's your preference, DM me or reach out via the contact, and I'd love to chat with you. And Helen, it's been such a pleasure. Love what you're doing. Oh, thank you so much. And also mention your podcast. Yeah. So Flipping 50, Helen's been on it. It's probably time to get you back on. We should do one live. So, and we should let everybody know, in the same proximity. So at some point we'll do some kind of a live on a hike. That would be fun. I would love that. Yeah. That'd be great. Well, thank you, Debra, again for everything. You've been a joy to see and speak with. Excuse me. I think we've been talking so much, I'm like losing my voice now. Anyway, but I had a wonderful time, catching up with you. Thank you for sharing all this great information. And I'm sure we will probably see each other again very soon. Thanks so much. Take care.
I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation with Debra. It was very enlightening, and I think that Debra provided just tons of great information for all of us, regardless if you start your menopause journey in your early 40s, possibly late 30s, all the way up to your 60s. We're all going to be experiencing, different types of symptoms, and none of us are going to be going through the exact same thing. There's no actual real prescription. There's no actual real protocol, in my opinion, going through menopause, because there's such variety in the symptoms that are occurring and the severity of all the symptoms and when everything starts. I think some of the biggest takeaways I took from this conversation was, first and foremost, you have to listen to your body and be mindful of the symptoms. a lot of times we'll be experiencing symptoms and we won't really know exactly what's going on and why we're experiencing those symptoms when it could be the onset of menopause. And once all that does happen, don't be afraid to ask for help. Now, there's many of us who have tried and were on hormone replacement therapy, but there's a lot of women out there who don't want to do that, and they would just rather go through a much more natural route. Well, the great thing is that there's just tons of variety and lots of different ways to tackle this 7-letter/4-letter word and have good outcomes. I know before I went on HRT, I did go through the herbal supplementation route, and I did find some things that actually really did help with going through these symptoms. But in the end, I decided to go with HRT because those hot flashes were just getting to me, and I was tired of doing laundry twice a day because I was just soaking through all my clothes. One of the things that I think also we really need to focus on as we get older is that you really can't outrun bone density. And as we get older, it is so imperative and becomes so important to get resistance training into your everyday routine to help you increase bone density. There's a lot of us out there. I know my mother was a victim of this, where she was just walking at work one day and she slipped and fell and ended up breaking her hip. I had an uncle who actually fell out on the street, and then a month later he passed away from a fall. So there's just so many things and so many complications that can happen due to weak bones and osteoporosis and just not taking care of your body, as well as eating a clean diet, supplementing with some really good vitamins, hydrating, sleep, just like we talked about in the podcast. Classic textbook, so imperative. Keeping your stress level low, just a variety of things that you can actually do on your own to help increase your bone density, give you an uptick in your fitness journey and fitness level. And as far as my podcast, Age is Irrelevant, it's really never too late to start. I have several women reaching out to me now on a regular basis in their 50s and 60s wanting to start fitness programs because they realize that they don't want to follow the path of their mothers and their grandmothers, and they want to be fit to play with their grandchildren. And I feel the exact same way. So there's no time to start until now. Start now. Improve the quality of your life through diet, get in some really good resistance training, and be open to there's all kinds of new research always going on. I always, especially now with menopause being so trendy, Google menopause and just see what's going on out there and see if anything new has come about. But if you enjoyed the conversation with Debra and you would like to reach out to her to talk to her more about menopause or possibly become a client, there's several ways that you can reach her. You can go to her website, flipping50.com, and that's all letters, FLIPPING, FIFTY. She's also on social media at Flipping50TV. You can find her on several of those social media platforms. And you can reach me at helen@ageisirrelevant.com, and you can check out my website at www.ageisirrelevant.com. Thank you again so much for listening. I am so appreciative of your value. If you like this podcast, please share. And also, please give me a 5-star rating and review on Apple if you would be so kind. Until next time, age truly is irrelevant. Don't you ever forget it. Bye-bye.